Hey everyone, welcome to another episode. And in this one, we're going to be talking about the most common and the most hated pest in an indoor environment, and that is the fungus gnat. So over the years, I've had many problems with the fungus gnat, and I've also tried many different things along the way. And I can definitely say what works and what doesn't work, or at least in my personal experience. And I've been doing this for like 5 or 6 years now, and my biggest encounter with them initially when I started was when I had Miracle-Gro potting soil, and for some reason this stuff, it just had so many fungus gnats in it. Of course I was also starting, maybe it was my personal error, but that's definitely when I had the biggest fungus gnat infestation that I've ever had, which led me into trying to find some ways to deal with it. That's also why I started making my own soil as well. So what I've tried that didn't work, I'll touch on that first, which are things like hydrogen peroxide in soil. It just didn't do anything for me. It just made the soil moist all the time because I was constantly applying this, and it just made the perfect environment to breed more fungus gnats. Like more larvae would just have more soil to be in it all the time, and it just created a perfect environment for them. So that didn't work. Adding boiling water to soil, that's a great way to maybe sterilize your soil, but if there's something planted in it, you're not going to be able to use that because that'll kill whatever's in it. So that's not going to work. I've tried nematodes. There's a lot of fuss and a lot of hype about nematodes. And they do work. I definitely found that the gnat population was reducing when I was using nematodes. There's just a couple of problems with them, and one of them is that they're a live animal. They have to be shipped to you. They have to be shipped fast, which sometimes can get costly. Then you have to apply them, which I would do. I would generally get like 10,000, I believe, and I would split it in half, do one day, then I'll put the other half in the fridge, and I'll do the rest a couple days later whenever the plants need to be watered again. So I kind of spread out the application there. But the problem is, they get the population down, okay? Then you'll apply your second application, and then it gets it pretty much under control. However, at that point, when most of them are dead and you still have gnats flying around or something like that, the infestation just starts back over again, because now these nematodes are going to be dead because there's nothing to eat, and then you just start all over again. So unless you're able to just constantly apply nematodes, I really don't find it to be as effective as it can be, especially when there's alternatives that are better in the end. So nematodes, not bad. It's generally, for me, it was pretty cost effective. It wasn't too expensive. But as far as keeping this going for a longer period of time, it just wasn't very practical. So that's kind of out. I have neem oil right here. That's another one that's very big and hyped about. And what this is supposed to do is it's supposed to inhibit the reproductive cycle. It's like kind of like a monkey wrench that you're throwing in the life cycle of the gnat larva and the fungus gnat. So I found that it works a little bit, but for gnats, I just don't find it to be too effective. Unless you're constantly applying this, like you make sure that it's a constant thing in the soil, because it does dissipate after a couple of days. You want to make sure that it's constantly in the soil. So it's quite a bit of work, because you have to dissolve it, and you have to apply it to your buckets, and then you have to pretty much use it right away, because otherwise it'll just solidify on the top of the water there. So even with some dish soap, which is what they tell you to use for this, a little bit, just like a teaspoon. But even with that, I just didn't find it to be very practical in the long term. So I like using it for really most pests. I mean, if there's a pest problem, especially indoors, even outdoors, indoors, it doesn't really matter, I'll use neem. Pure neem oil, by the way. It has to be pure neem oil, not just, if it has an extract, it doesn't work quite the same. But anyway, that's a different topic. I just didn't find it to be 100% effective, and it didn't find it to be the most practical in the long term. Okay, so the last one that I really came down to, as far as controlling the fungus gnats in the soil are the mosquito bits. It's just a granular. It has a bacteria, BTI, attached to it. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It's hard to pronounce. But anyway, this stuff, it works really well. It's a bacteria, so it has all the benefits of the nematodes, but you can just keep on applying it because you can just keep this. I mean, I don't know if it has an expiration date, but it'll last a long time. So I haven't really found this to be an issue. So it has all the benefits of the nematodes, but it has the pros of just being constantly applied whenever you feel like it. So this is the big thing. You want to control them in the soil. The soil is one of the bigger things. So as far as applying these mosquito bits, it's it says mosquito bits. It's for mosquitoes and for the gnat larvae as well, for gnats. It also becomes a mosquito dunks. I believe that's the same thing. It's just a big circular disc that you dunk, and hence the dunk. I think that's the same. But as far as applying it, you can just use the granule on the top of your soil, and then it just kind of seeps into the soil whenever you water your plants. I don't really find that to be the most effective way, however. I find it to be a lot more effective to take a 5-gallon bucket, this is about 19 liters, to put 2 tablespoons of this in there, fill it up, ideally rainwater, but tap water will be okay too, depending on where you live. Let it sit for 15 minutes, and then you're ready to water your plants. And then you want to make sure that you water everything. Make sure that the BTI is present in everything. Because if there's still gnats flying around, those are going to continually spread themselves. And unless you have the BTI present in everything, it's not going to be 100%. Like, you're not going to get rid of them 100%. It's hard to get rid of them 100% anyway because of the conditions, and they proliferate themselves so easily in soil that it's hard to get rid of them 100%. But if you don't tackle every single container with soil, then you want to just do everything ideally. So I would just do, whenever you're going to water your plants, just make sure you have some BTI in that water, even if you have them on a different schedule, or you just, you do what you're supposed to, which is just water when your plants get dry and not have them on a schedule at all. But as long as you water your plants with the BTI in the water, then you'll be okay. You can still leave the granules on the top. I think it's just corn husks, and that'll just decompose at some point. Yes, it'll mold. I don't mind that. But if you don't like that, then I guess you can also sift them out. But that's, in my opinion, the easiest way is to just apply it to water. So that's the first step. That's going to get rid of the vast majority of the gnat larvae, which is a process because it's a living organism that has to eat the gnat larvae. So it will take a while. It's not going to be gone overnight. This will take, a couple of weeks, at minimum, I would say, of applying the BTI before you start seeing, okay, it's really going down. And that's one of the reasons why you also really want to tackle the second part, which is the adults. The adults are the ones that actually go around laying the eggs. So you want to really tackle them as well. It's really a multi-pronged approach that you want to take. And there's many things you can do for the adults. They're mostly an annoyance. They're not gonna, they fly up your nose. It's really frustrating. But they're not gonna do any harm other than just flying around and, spreading gnats, which I guess is a problem. So one of the things that I do is I just hang up these little fly strips. They don't look good. I don't like to use them, but it's just very effective. If you hang these things up, it's just a passive trap. It just attracts them like crazy, and they just, it helps get rid of a lot of adults. Other things you can do is you can cut these strips here into little, however big you want these squares to be. They have little stakes usually that come with it that you can then stick in your soil, and that'll get rid of some adults as well. But generally this is mostly used to kind of get an indication if you have fungus gnats, like for identification. It's not really used for too much actual prevention. It's not going to prevent anything. But I do like to use it to just get rid of some of the adults and help to prevent a little bit of spread. So what I actually would like to do is turn that active control of the adults in a plant, which, you know, we all like to grow more plants, right? So that's what I would ideally like to do in the form of a predatory plant. It's just something that sits there and it's going to do the same thing as these things do, but it looks a lot nicer and you actually are growing something else that's interesting. So one of the things is a Pinguicula. It's a predatory plant that has sticky leaves that the fungus gnat will land on the leaf and then it just dies, just like a lot like these straps here. And then they get consumed and, you know, it just turns into a husk and then it falls off. Problem is, however, is that in the winter, those Pinguiculas, the predatory plant, will actually turn more succulent-like and then lose its predatory aspect of it. So it's mostly succulent at that point and it just doesn't really catch any fungus gnat at that point. So it's a bit of a problem. It's mostly a summer and growing season type of thing. Then there's pitcher plants. I'm really hoping that works out, which is also another thing that you can do as well to tackle some of the adults, is to leave some water sitting out, because for some reason the adults will just fly in the water and then they drown. Well, I'm hoping that the pitcher plant will do something similar, because they'll have water sitting in the pitchers. The gnat will fly in, it drowns, the pitcher plant drinks, basically consumes the gnat. You know, there's acid, like I believe a mild acid in the water in the pitcher plant, and it slowly dissolves the fungus gnat. So that's a really great way. So just using water, or even potentially using a pitcher plant ideally, to kind of, you know, get the nice factor out of the way. And then there's another one, which is called a sundew. Sundews, the only problem with them is that they need a lot of humidity and they need a lot of sunlight, which in an indoor environment in my plant room, the humidity is there, but I just don't know if I have enough sunlight to really make them grow well. So it's something I might experiment with if I find them, but I'm really hoping to find a Pinguicula and a pitcher plant. I also have a Venus flytrap. I did a video about that, repotting that one. But that's mostly an outdoor thing. You could take them inside, but they need an outdoor dormancy, so that doesn't really work in the wintertime either. So those are my main things that I would like to replace this with, the catching the adults, which is with pitcher plant or a Pinguicula. So that's pretty much it. I highly recommend that you use these mosquito bits. You try it out. This has been the best for fungus gnats by far. I've tried many more things I'm sure that I can't even think about right now, but all the other methods that I've seen just aren't working. I wouldn't want to sterilize my soil because you want the microbiology, so you don't want to cook your soil and kill everything in it every single time, because you just want it to be alive and active, and even indoors it would be beneficial to your plant. So I don't want to cook it all and just have it be dead dirt. You know, that's just not good. So this allows me to get around it. I pretty much, whenever I water, I try to add this BTI to the plant, so it's always a constant application. And I have found that the fungus gnat problems are essentially non-existent. You might see one buzzing around, you're not going to get rid of them 100%. But for the most part, this took care of it. And this is coming from a big infestation. Like, after using this a couple weeks later, you'll find a massive difference. So I really hope that you try this out, because I think it'll really help for you as well. Where to find this? I get mine usually online. That's where I found it to be the easiest, but you can sometimes also get it in big box stores. Some nurseries might carry it ideally, but I don't find nurseries to really carry it too much. So that's why I usually just gravitate to online. I really wish nursery would carry this, because it's used by so many gardeners now that it really should be in a nursery, I feel like. But I just don't see it there too much yet. So online it is. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you get something out of it. I hope you try these mosquito bits to tackle your problem. Let me know in the comments section if that worked for you, because I'd really like to know, and I'm sure other people would like to know as well if it worked. You know, the more people's experiences that we can get, the better. So, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Tot de volgende keer.